Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us in recognizing the 135th anniversary of AAUW's American Fellowships and our Alumnae Recognition Award presentation. My name is Tiffany Sanchez, and I'm the Vice President of Programs and Fellowships here at AAUW. Whether you're a member of AAUW, a fellowship or grant recipient, or someone who supports our vision of achieving equity for all, we could not do this important work without this community. In a very real way, there would be no AAUW without you. And there are a lot of you here today. We have a full program, so let's get right to it. First, I'm delighted to commemorate 135 years of the American Fellowships Program. The American Fellowship Program began in 1888, at a time when women were discouraged from pursuing an education. It is AAUW's largest fellowship program and the oldest non-institutional source of graduate funding for women in the United States. AAUW's American Fellowships support women scholars who are pursuing full-time study to complete dissertations, conduct postdoctoral research full-time, or preparing research for publication. Candidates are evaluated based on scholarly excellence, quality and originality of project design, and active commitment to helping women and girls through service in their communities, professions, or fields of research. I'm pleased to share with you a video highlighting a few members of our alumnae community and the impact of the American Fellowships Program over the years.
My name is Toby Jenkins. I am a professor of higher education and associate provost for faculty development at the University of South Carolina.
My name is Ezinne Achinivu. I'm currently an assistant professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago in the chemical engineering department.
I'm Shanna Green Benjamin, and I'm a professor of African American Studies at Wake Forest University.
My name is Susana Hernandez, and I am an assistant professor at Northern Arizona University in the educational psychology department.
My award year was 2011, and I received the American Postdoctoral Research Fellowship.
I was a 2018-2019 American Fellow, and I received a specific award for publication grant writing.
So I received an American Postdoctoral Research Award in 2011 for my book project, Half in Shadow, The Life and Legacy of Nellie Y. McKay.
I was awarded the AAUW American Dissertation Fellowship for the 2019-2020 academic year.
So the focus of my project during my award year, an initial launch exploring hip hop culture, the ways that the culture provided or transformed educational spaces in really important ways.
Yeah, I was currently a postdoctoral fellow. I was actually working in France for bioenergy processing. My research project generally focuses on converting waste biomass into biofuels.
So at that time, I was studying the life story of McKay, who was a foremother of Black feminist thought. There came to be a place for me in an English department. And so my research on McKay was as much about her life and about field formation as it was about the efforts of Black feminist scholars to create a space for me in the American Academy.
During my award year, I was working on my PhD at Texas A&M University in educational administration with an emphasis in higher education administration. When I received the fellowship, I was working on completing my dissertation study, which was examining the campus carry law in Texas and how it impacted the work lives of faculty of color. And part of that work was looking at faculty women of color and the experiences with this new law.
I am now a full professor. I've also gone back into academic administration and accepted some additional academic appointments or administrative appointments. So I recently served in the graduate school as an associate dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And just recently, I was appointed associate provost for faculty development at my university.
Yeah, since then, I've actually started my own research group at University of Illinois, Chicago. I'm still pursuing the same research goals, but I'm focused now on exploring different products beyond just bioenergy. I'm also working on bioplastics and biochemicals that are derived from waste.
So these days, I'm thinking in more interdisciplinary terms about my research. So my current research is titled Radical Hospitality, Black Women Culture and Cuisine. And I'm looking at African-American hospitality traditions and reading not only Black women's foodways, but also traditions of collecting china and linen, party practices, and the ways that Black folks really cultivate care and community beyond the gaze of white folks.
Currently, I'm in my second year as an assistant professor at Northern Arizona University in the Department of Educational Psychology. I'm also the program coordinator for the Counseling Student Affairs program. My current research is actually looking at developmental education reform efforts in Texas. So me and a research team, we're currently looking at how this new law and policy has been implemented and if it's supporting student success.
The fellowship really launched my initial research agenda. It has been an absolutely incredible experience with the launch of this book and the reception of the work and the project. It is a lot of energy and interest in the book, and I'm really excited. And I know for sure that my study of hip hop was made possible because of this award.
Yeah, I'd say it impacted it a lot. In my field, that is academia, generally there's the publish or perish notation that if you don't have papers, you're not going to progress in that field. So this publication grant actually gave me, I think it was 6 weeks to 12 weeks of time that I could take away from work and focus that on publication writing. And the grant supported what would have been the salary or living expenses I had to give up to do that.
This award was really transformative for me. It came at a time when I really wasn't sure exactly what the end product was going to be. And so it gave me time away from my teaching and research opportunities so that I could, just imagine freely and think creatively. And with the award, because I was able to focus on that research, on reading the letters, on processing the letters, I was free to not just think about her life story in terms of a traditional biography. I hope it resonates with a new generation of scholars who are trying to position themselves and figure out how they will belong in institutions or at institutions.
The AAUW Fellowship has definitely impacted my career. It gave me time to really focus on completing my dissertation. I feel like I was able to make my dissertation even better because of the extra time I had that I probably wouldn't have had without the support of the fellowship. I also feel part of a community where I had access to resources and a support network at the national level, but also at the local level in Texas with AAUW chapters there. I was also able to focus on the job search, which the academic job market can be tough. I'm really thankful for AAUW and their support that they were able to help me during a time when I was just trying to complete my dissertation and find a job during a global pandemic. So thank you, AAUW.
I hope you found those stories as inspiring as I did. Next, I'd like to introduce a video welcome from our board chair, Julia Brown.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Blazing Trails is really part of AAUW's heritage. In 1888, AAUW launched its American Fellowships program to allow women to pursue higher education in a time when very few women had those opportunities. Since then, AAUW has grown to become one of the largest funders of women's graduate education, investing in women who go on to change the world. We are literally funding women's history. Because of our dedicated staff and supporters like all of you, AAUW has stood the test of time. Over our 142-year history, AAUW has adapted to remain relevant to the needs of today's women and girls. The last time we gathered to recognize one of our outstanding AAUW alumni, we were in the grip of a pandemic, which has changed so much of what we all do every day. That year, 2021, was also when Gloria L. Blackwell became AAUW's CEO. This year, as we mark the 135th anniversary of AAUW American Fellowships, we remain firmly committed to our mission, supported by solid fiscal management, good governance, and thoughtful leadership. With nearly 2 decades of service at AAUW, Gloria has been the driving force behind this organization's most successful and innovative programs. Under her leadership, we're doing more to focus on racial equity, economic empowerment, and developing inclusive pipelines for women of color. And we're working to ensure women and girls have equal access to science, technology, engineering, and math as viable, high-paying career pathways. These are truly the fields of the future. In 2 years, Gloria has expanded AAUW's esteemed fellowships and grants program, awarding more than $70 million in funding to women scholars and programs in the U.S. and abroad. Not only has she significantly expanded the organization's outreach to women and girls of color, she also serves as AAUW's main representative to the United Nations, advancing equality for women and girls across the globe. Gloria's work is now focused on building partnerships with major funders, local government, and institutes of higher education. As we continue to face ever-shifting political, economic, and social realities that impact our mission, Gloria has established the groundwork to ensure AAUW continues to stand the test of time, leading our organization with both fortitude and grace. Gloria is the right leader at the right time. It's therefore my honor and distinct privilege to turn the floor over to a trailblazer in her own right, AAUW CEO, Gloria L. Blackwell.
Thank you so much, Julia. And again, welcome everyone. It's great to see so many members, alumni, supporters, and partners joining us today. I'm grateful for your support and always energized by your passion and your commitment. As AAUW marks the 135th anniversary of the American Fellowships Program, we have so many highlights worthy of celebration. There may be many sister organizations in the gender equity space now and over the years, and we value our coalitions and collaborations, but AAUW was the pioneer. As a matter of fact, in just a few weeks, we will mark AAUW's 142nd anniversary. And our collective impact nationally, at the state level, locally, and even globally is what makes us unique and has provided deep and lasting contributions to gender equity, from our research to our support for thousands of scholars and community-based organizations, and the countless laws we've helped shape, like the Equal Pay Act and Title IX. Obviously, there's so much to celebrate, and we should all be incredibly proud of what AAUW has accomplished for women and girls. We know we've overcome many barriers to equity through education, research, and advocacy, but there are still plenty of barriers that remain. And AAUW remains dedicated to ensuring that all women are lifted up, especially those disproportionately impacted by unfair policies and practices. Because we cannot wait any longer for a more equitable society for women and girls, and AAUW will continue to leverage our unique history and our amazing successes to grow our impact and realize true equity for all. We are definitely living through a challenging time in so many ways, but what gives me hope is the impact and the stories I hear from our outstanding fellows and grantees. So let's move into the centerpiece of our celebration today, the presentation of our distinguished 2023 AAUW Alumnae Recognition Award. The board approved my recommendation to establish this award back in 2013 to honor a past recipient of an AAUW fellowship or grant who has attained outstanding success and national or international distinction as a result of their AAUW award in their chosen profession or life's work. Well, that's the textbook definition anyway, but there is a simpler description. This award is AAUW's way of bragging a bit about how good we are at spotting talent and lifting up potential. So some previous recipients include Dr. Tara Trent, one of the most internationally recognized voices for women and girls education, and also Oprah's favorite guest, and Dr. Melissa Harris Perry, award-winning author, expert host and media commentator, and professor of politics and international affairs. And also Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General of the World Trade Organization, the first woman and the first African to serve in that role. So we don't have a bad track record, huh? And it's about to get even better. We first invested in the recipient of this year's award in 1978 when she received an American Fellowship from AAUW to study English and African American literature as a doctoral candidate at the University of Connecticut. She was co-founder and publisher until 1995 of Kitchen Table, Women of Color Press, the first U.S. publisher for women of color. Post-fellowship, she continued on to become a pioneer in defining African American women's literary tradition and to build Black women's studies and Black feminism in the United States. She has been politically active in many movements for social justice since the 1960s. She has edited 3 major collections about Black women: Conditions, 5, The Black Women's Issue, All the Women Are White, All the Blacks Are Men, But Some of Us Are Brave, Black Women's Studies. And this year marks the 40th anniversary of Homegirls, a Black feminist anthology first published in 1983. She's also the co-author of Yours in Struggle, 3 Feminist Perspectives on Anti-Semitism and Racism, first published in 1984. And she's the general editor of the Reader's Companion to U.S. Women's History. It's also the 25th anniversary of a collection of her essays, The Truth That Never Hurts, Writings on Race, Gender, and Freedom, published by Rutgers University Press in 1998. Among her many honors and distinctions, too numerous to cite, in 2017, she received the African American Policy Forum's Harriet Tubman Lifetime Achievement Award, and in 2005 was a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. She resides in Albany, New York, and served 2 terms as a member of the Albany Common Council from 2006 to 2013. From 2014 to 2017, she served as the Special Community Projects Coordinator for the City of Albany, New York, helping to implement their equity agenda. I could not be more proud to announce the 2023 Distinguished AAUW Alumnae Recognition Awardee, Barbara Smith. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Gloria.
Barbara, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. It is truly a pleasure to honor you as the 2023 Alumnae Recognition Awardee. We all applaud your leadership and contributions to the study of Black women's feminism.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be with all of you today. And also, when I was first informed that this wonderful thing was happening, these are life-changing moments, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we're going to be mailing this out to you, but here is the beautiful award that you're going to get from AAUW. We are thrilled to count you among the prestigious alumni of the AAUW American Fellowships program. I do enjoy hearing stories and memories from awardees of when they received their AAUW Fellowship Award, because I know for so many of you, it was a positive and an incredibly life-changing experience. So I know it's been a minute. You did receive your fellowship in 1978. So let's start by talking about, receiving your fellowship and the impact that it really had on the trajectory of your life and your career.
Well, as you know, I've devoted my life to several things, but I always remind people that my first love is literature, particularly African American literature, and then beginning the field of Black women's literature, Black women's writing. And I'm sure at the time, although I can't pinpoint the particular moment, I'm sure at the time I was thrilled because of the fact that the AAUW Fellowship allowed me to continue my graduate work with the intention of doing research about Black women's literature, which at that time was a completely unknown field. I explained to people also that when you're a part of my generation and you teach African American literature or ethnic studies or women's studies or queer studies, it's not because you ever took any of those courses. So we were making it up from scratch. And as I said, that financial support and faith that I had what it took to do the work was incredibly uplifting for me.
That's really quite remarkable. And so after receiving your fellowship, do you remember the next step or the next pathway that you took?
Well, I was doing research, discovering some writers that most people did not know about. One of the writers I was interested in was Zora Neale Hurston. And at that time, you couldn't even dependably make a decision about what you were going to teach. And I was teaching during those years as well. You couldn't make a decision because you never knew when the books were going to go out of print. So I had a precious copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God and made a big mistake. I let somebody borrow it and they left it on the subway. And that meant that I had no copy myself. And then, as I said, for my classes, it depended on what's in print. Is Anne Petrie's Street in print? Trying to think of some of the other books that would go in and out of print that were so difficult. But as I said, I was trying to find traditions. And one of the people I was most interested in was Frances E.W. Harper. She was a poet and a novelist who was writing in the late 1800s. And those are the kind of writers, as I said, that most people had never heard of at the time. So I was delving. I was teaching the field to myself, so to speak. And that's what the fellowship allowed me to do. And actually, around the time, I realized that around the time that I received the fellowship, I was actually a member at that point of the Modern Language Association Commission on the Status of Women in the Profession. And I was a grad student and I was on this commission with professors. And I had a friend who thought that I'd be a good addition to that commission. And that was a very important place for starting women's studies in the United States, because literature at that time, at least, and we would hope now, but almost every student in college has to take some kind of an English course. At that point, a lot of people they hadn't even heard of women's studies. A lot of people didn't think that there was such a thing as Black women's studies. They questioned that, but I could see it. And so by seeing it, we did indeed accomplish that. And eventually we published the book, But Some of Us Are Brave, that you mentioned. And that was the first book about Black women's studies ever published in the United States.
That's remarkable. So your vision definitely came to fruition. So you co-founded the Kitchen Table Women of Color Press in the early 1980s. So talk a bit about how you feel that paved the way for women of color writers.
Definitely paved the way. This is at a time, again, always being like one of those early adopters or whatever. This is at a time that no one really paid much attention, if any attention, 2 women of color writers. One of the decisions that people who started the press made early on, and Audre Lorde was really a catalyst for the press starting, because we had become friends in the late 1970s. I was aware of her work before I even met her, because I was in literature and in African American literature specifically. So we met in the late 1980s. The late 1970s, and she was coming to Boston, where I lived. And this is kind of an anniversary, because Halloween was just 2 days ago, and she was coming to Boston for a Black women's Halloween poetry reading with some other writers from New York. And as she was preparing for her visit, we were talking on the phone, and she said, "Barbara, we really need to do something about publishing." And of course, I knew exactly why she said that and what she meant, because this was an era of the special issue, when sometimes you got invited to contribute to a publication that already existed. I co-edited the Black women's issue of Conditions magazine. That was a lesbian feminist arts magazine focusing on literature. Really wonderful, a wonderful publication that I did a lot of work, my early writing for. But that Conditions 5 issue, that was not what they published all the time. I was asked, as well as another person was asked to do that, and we co-edited the magazine. But we wanted to have, as Virginia Woolf said, we wanted to have a press of our own. One of the decisions that we made then early on is that we would be a press for all women of color. Some people think that Kitchen Table was a Black feminist press because I was so visible as the publisher eventually of Kitchen Table. But it was a press for all women of color. And if you look at our very short list, we didn't publish a lot of books, but the books that we published had a lot of impact. When you look at that list, you will see that we were publishing work by Asian American writers, by Latina writers. We were doing a lot of different indigenous writers in our anthologies. So we were, trying to cover that landscape. Nowadays, I read about and hear about young writers of color, women, or however they define their gender, but women, femme, two-spirited, gender nonconforming, whatever. But the thing is, I read about these people, and they are clearly very, very talented, and their first book contract is with a mainstream publisher. And when I read those announcements about that happening, I think, and I sometimes say to my friends who actually know what I'm talking about, I say, that's because of Kitchen Table. There's no way that these particular writers would be getting first publication contracts with mainstream publishers, because we carved it out. We showed that these books had quality, that these authors' writing had quality, and we also showed that these books sold. And that's how that happened.
Absolutely. I love that. And you can see that you were truly an inspiration that paved the way for how so many, women of color who followed you, right, had the opportunity, right, not to just be a special issue, but they were able to come in and immediately have a good contract. That's amazing. So thank you again for, paving the way. So as a feminist-driven leader, what do you think are the shifting a bit? What do you think are the key attributes that you believe women as leaders bring to the table?
I don't want to be a essentialist. That's one of the things that they talk about, in the academy. And I don't know, I don't think it's just a literature thing. Being essentialist means that you look at someone's identity and you decide that they're a certain kind of person who believes certain kinds of things and does certain kinds of things just based upon who they were born to be or whatever. And that's called being a essentialist. But I do think that there are undoubtedly good social science studies that show that the way that women make decisions, the way that women lead, and the way that women interact with people in the process of getting work and projects done can be different. And I think that all of the things that we bring as people identified as women at birth, because I really want to be clear, not to be essentialist. When I say women, I'm talking about trans women as well. But whoever we are, whenever we are, when we bring that sensibility to and those values to whatever our endeavors are, I think it makes a difference. I think that women are supposed to be more cooperative. I hope that's the case. It's not always, but I just think we're grounded. One of the things about, I think, the reality of women's relationship to social reproduction. In other words, reproduction is the reality of being able to carry a child or carry a baby to the point of birth. That's reproduction. But social reproduction takes that to what is the work that women are generally expected to do, and also expected to do without compensation, in relationship to the economy, the family, the workforce. Social reproduction. If not for women's free labor in the home and often elsewhere, the economy would just come to a standstill, because we make all of this possible. We reproduce the workforce. And I think that because of those experiences of being very grounded in what do people need on a day-to-day basis, how much food, where do I get the food? Can I afford the food? Where is the food? Am I living in a food apartheid? Or sometimes as it's called a food desert situation. I think that we have a lot of practicality. And also I think we can have a valuing of people as we find them. In other words, instead of having expectations about you must do this, you must be that, I'm going to be the dictator and the boss of you, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to be in order to please me. I think that sometimes maybe we have a little more wherewithal to see people's gifts and talents and humanity than people who are trying to just do this kind of raw competition thing. And if I've been a centralist, what can I say? Sue me. But that's what I've experienced, and particularly as a Black woman. I feel that the values that I got growing up in a home surrounded by Black Southern women, they stand me in good stead to this very day.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And as a mom of three, I can definitely co-sign so much of what you just said. We know that many advancements have been made to the promotion of gender equity, right, during your lifetime, during your generation. And so what do you think are some of the new challenges that the current generation of emerging women leaders faces?
We have had a number of backlashes. I mean, I was actually in the feminist movement. I wasn't just someone who studied about it or looked at it from afar. I was a person who helped to build Black feminism in particular, but that meant that I was involved in the women's movement across the board, because we really believed in doing coalition work. So we weren't just in our own little corridor or little path or silo, as they say. We were trying to make the world better for everyone, and not just for women, I might add. We saw our work as being very, very positive for everyone, because we wanted everyone to be recognized as fully human and as having gifts that should be respected and cherished. I mean, we had a perspective about what human life was could be when some of the negatives were removed, that I think were really good could have been good for everyone. As I said, there have been a number of backlashes against the women's movement and against women's issues. And we're living in a period of backlash right now. The Supreme Court decision to strike down Roe last year in 1922 has transformed women's social status in the United States, as well as our health status. I was just reading an article this morning about how infant mortality rates have risen in the United States in the last year or so. And one of the reasons that they think this may be true is because reproductive choices are more limited. There's more stress put upon childbearing, just the whole context of it, that can indeed lead to poor birth outcomes. And then, of course, the proportionate reality of our both infant and maternal mortality rates, which are incredibly high in the United States, in comparison, in particular, with other so-called Western industrialized nations, is because of racism, because it is the outcomes, the birth outcomes of Black women and of Indigenous women that makes our overall statistics be so poor. And there are, there are census tracts in the United States where Black women without economic access live, where the rates of infant and maternal mortality mirror those of so-called developing nations. So we have a lot to deal with. I think that people continue to be afraid of women's power. And who knows why? I mean, I don't know why, but the thing is that I think that there's always like an attempt to push us back when we move forward. And we just keep on speaking truth, and we keep on looking at the details. I always think the details are so important of what's happening here. How are people being affected by particular policies? What policies would change things? What factors would no cost school lunches be a deciding factor, for example, in school success? These are the details, and these are the kinds of things that we look at and we continue to press forward. But I don't think that the women's movement will ever disappear. I don't think that. AAUW would not let that happen, among other things. But I think we're here for the duration.
Absolutely. And when you talk about us, things being rolled backwards, it really does have a very striking impact. Even some of the things understanding that, like, how did we get to this place where we feel like we're going backwards instead of forwards, right? Not even just staying still, there's actual backward movement. And how can women leaders collectively work to really achieve greater representation in positions of leadership, for example, both locally and beyond. I know that you have worked in, different leadership positions there in Albany. So, what would be your thoughts about, how leaders getting in those leadership positions would really help perhaps to continue that movement forward?
Whenever anyone uses the term leader in relationship to me, I kind of think like, who are you talking about? Or what are you talking about? Not who so much, but as what? To me, I always just say, I'm just getting my work done. I'm just doing the work that I feel driven to do. I had role models growing up because everybody in my family worked in one way or another. Most of them worked for pay. And they expected my twin sister and me, Beverly, they expected us to work hard too in school, but they never bribed us. They didn't have to bribe us, because we took to school like ducks to water, which made us nerds. We were nerds in the early days, before the word nerd had been invented. But it was kind of like, we go to work, we take care of the house, we take care of you. Your job is to go to school and not waste your time there, And because my family loved education and valued it so highly, that wasn't so hard, for us. So as I said, I'm just getting work done. I'm just doing work. So leader maybe, but to me, one needs to have the right motivations for being in positions that are perceived to be leadership. I ran for common council, which is our city council in Albany. I ran the first time and I served 2 terms. I ran because I lived in a neighborhood that was neglected, and that many of the social problems that really plague our cities were true of the neighborhood that I lived in and owned property in. I lived in a house that I actually owned. And I was doing things to help neighbors, like an elderly neighbor of mine wanted handicapped or disabled street signs for parking in front of her house. I knew nothing about how to get that. I mean, they don't teach that in grad school, but it was, I figured it out because I can read, so yeah, I read, I found out, and I actually got these signs put up, I got a mailbox replaced. That was falling apart. These are very practical things. And because I was doing some of that work, I didn't actually aspire to be on the Common Council. People were suggesting to me at a certain point, why don't you think about it? And I was like, why would I think about that? But indeed, that's what happened. And it was one of the most valuable experiences of my life to serve the people, to serve my constituents, to serve my community, and also to be outspoken on their behalf. And whenever I meet younger people, and I often do here locally and other places, who are interested in particular in running for office, you know what I tell them? I always say, do something else. Do not do something else so that you never run. What I'm telling them is get other kinds of experiences so that when you do run for office, you will know about something besides door knocking, and petition sheets. You need to know about something else, be grounded, I mean, if you're interested in the environment and environmental racism, do that. If you're interested in education, do that. Come to running for office with something under your belt, so to speak, that's not just being a grand elected person, because those people who only want to be in it for the power and the acclaim and the prestige, they're not the best people necessarily to serve our communities. Come to running for office with something else that you know how to do. Being a mathematician, that's not bad. I'm not even saying what you have to do. I'm just saying bring something to that experience, particularly if it's people-centered, so that when you do become elected, that you'll have something to offer to people that's not just the rote, I have power, go see my secretary or something like that, just having really real sense of values and compassion. I think that, as I said, I think people are afraid of women's power, and the fact that we now have not only a woman vice president, but a woman of color who's a vice president, Black and South Asian. So, that's a lot of barriers being broken all at once. But we don't have that. Proportionally, we don't have that many women in elected office in the United States. There are other countries that do far better with that. So, to my way of thinking, we have a long way to go. But moving with integrity is the most important thing. I don't care what you're doing. Move with integrity. It's not all about you.
Thank you. Those are, just remarkable words of advice, that you considered yourself, just to be doing the work that needed to be done, and stepping up and doing it. And definitely a shout out to, the early nerds before nerds were a thing. You've broken so many barriers during your remarkable career, and just inspired so many women to push boundaries. And so those words of wisdom are really important that you just noted, whether it's, leadership, entering into politics, or women just starting out in their careers in any field, right? Any industry, in higher education, or movement building. So you really are the epitome of true leadership or stepping up just to do the work that needs to be done. And I really appreciate the way that you exemplify the power of supporting women's education and paying it forward. So thank you so much again for your trailblazing contributions to our shared mission of achieving gender equity for all. We're so pleased that you joined us today, and congratulations again on your achievement as our 2023 AAUW Alumnae Recognition Awardee. And I would like for you to, give us some parting words to those who participated with us today and joined us for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Gloria, and thank you also to the American Association of University Women. I was really touched and thrilled when earlier in our program this afternoon that I can't remember which one of you said it, something about recognizing talent early on. And I thought, who, me? That was just wonderful. And that is wonderful for us to continue to do. I guess what I would say to people who are joining us, who are in the ether, because we're not exactly seeing you, but we know you're there. What I would say is don't give up hope. And also don't be miserable doing that work. Generally speaking, I've done what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. When I wanted to teach, that's what I did. When I wanted to move on and be a publisher, that's what I did. When I wanted to run for office and be on the Common Council, that's what I did. It's kind of nonsensical because it wasn't the most practical thing in the world. I said that I thought women were practical, but maybe not me. But the thing is that I had hope, I had a vision, I had passion about the kind of world I wanted to live in. So don't give up hope and don't be miserable doing your work, particularly the work of your heart. If the work of your heart is making you miserable, you can move on and find some other work of your heart and things will be better.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And now we're going to move on to the final part of our event. I'm going to send it back to Katrina Breeze for a final dose of gratitude before we close. Katrina or Tiffany, thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria, and congratulations again to you, Barbara. Thanks again to all of you for your support of this organization and your commitment to equity for all. The work that we do here at AAUW would not be possible without this community. Barbara is a living reminder of the wonderful things that can happen when we invest in women and girls. To learn more about the Alumnae Recognition Awardee and rewatch our anniversary video, please visit AAUW's website at www.aauw.org. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Have a good evening.